Hello, I'm Jackson, and I'm a recovering coward. For most of my life, I've had a difficult time getting through my worst obstacles because I let my fears hold me back. Instead of taking the necessary steps and fighting back, I usually did the opposite. I did nothing. I just gave up and I only dreamed that I was being brave. Not surprisingly, I grew up hating myself. This is the typical lifestyle of a coward. There's nothing more shameful, less honorable than being a coward. A coward is somebody that doesn't have the courage to do the right thing. He's timid. He's easily intimidated, and he would rather run away from his problems than face them. When I think back about my life when I used to be a coward, man, I could have accomplished so much if I just had a tiny bit of courage. I could have been more successful. I probably could have made more friends. Heck, I probably could have even gotten a date with Debbie Lee. In high school, Debbie Lee was the girl of my dreams, and I always knew we would make a great couple. She had the perfect Farrah Fawcett haircut that would have matched my perfect featherback hairdo. This was the 1970s, and that was the look back then. Even though I had this mad crush on Debbie Lee, I just couldn't get the nerve to go up and talk to her. But here is the worst part. Even after I got my new type perm, the new perm that everybody said I looked like the Asian Ronald McDonald, and I found out Debbie still liked me and wanted to go out with me, I still wasn't man enough to go up and make my moves on Debbie. That's how much of a chicken I was back then. Seriously. Story of my life, right? Sometimes I think about how my life would have changed if I had the courage to ask Debbie out on a date. But more than often, I think about how Patrick's life would have changed if I had the guts to have saved him from that vicious beating he took. I was 15 and I was walking home from school when I heard Patrick screaming for help. I turned around and these three bullies jumped Patrick from behind and they started hitting him and kicking him as violently as they could. Patrick put his arms up to try to block the attack, but it did no good. The blows were just way too fast and they were coming from so many different angles. It seemed like every punch and kick was landing on Patrick's face and body. I just remember Patrick lying on the ground, pleading for his tormentors to stop as he screamed from the top of his lungs, "Why are you doing this to me?" I wanted so badly to go save Patrick. But I felt so scared. I felt so immobilized. Instead of running toward Patrick, I ran the other way and I hid behind a tree. And from there, I could still hear Patrick crying and saying over and over again, "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?" From this incident, it became obvious to me that running away from fear became my negative pattern in life. It just became a bad habit that I just couldn't break. And that's all my fears ever was. A bad habit. A bad habit that almost destroyed my life. But I have no doubt it's ruined many of your lives right now. To overcome my identity as a coward, I studied the science of habits, how habits are formulated and how to break habits. And what I learned, I used it and I applied it to my damn habit of being a coward. This is what I learned. Every habit has three parts. The first part is called the cue. The cue is what you label the emotion as fear. For me, like many of you, my cue to fear are physical sensations. Like my heart rate starts to speed up. I get butterflies in my stomach. My palms get really sweaty. When I feel these physical sensations, I just know fear's around the corner. The second response, the second part to every habit is the response. The response are the actions that you take once your cues triggers you that fear is coming. For me, I always have the same sequence of responses once fear strikes. For example, immediately after I get my cues, my physical cues that fear is coming, I get the same sequence of responses that attack me. For instance, I can't do this. This is way too scary. If I do this, all I'm going to do is fail. That was an example of all the self-doubt that comes and attacks me as soon as I get my response to fear. When this happens, I try to talk myself out of the fear, but I usually talk myself out of taking action. The second response after that is I do nothing. The third part to every habit is the reward. By not taking any action, I reward myself with no added pain or no added stress in life as I get to hide out in my comfort zone. And my comfort zone is where I feel safe and protected. But that's where I remain a coward. This is the anatomy of my habit of fear, and you can see how crippling it is to me. In order for me to break my bad habit, all I would have to do is change my responses and how I reward myself. In other words, my cues to fear are always going to remain the same. I'm always going to have a fast heart rate. My palms are always going to feel sweaty. But what must change is how I respond to the cues and how I reward myself. The first response that I had to change is I had to replace my long drawn out conversation with myself with a positive mantra. A mantra are statements that you say to yourself over and over again that propel you into taking action. For a mantra to be effective, it has to be meaningful. It has to be very personal to you. For me, whenever fear strikes, the mantra that I like to use is, I got this. I got this. I got this. I got this. The more I repeat, I got this, the more likely it will kick me into taking action. What I discovered is that whenever I try to have a long drawn out conversation about a fear, I get freaked out. Then I end up doing nothing. Mantras, they prevent this because they're short and to the point and they keep you focused. But more importantly, mantras prevent your self-doubt from breaking in. The second response that I had to change is I had to replace my lack of action with some behavior moving toward the fear. By doing so, I would prevent myself from procrastinating or running away from my problems. What I learned is that the time frame between me reciting a mantra and my intention of taking an action, the longer this gap of time between the two, the more afraid I would become. Why? Because too much time without any action would allow my brain to overthink and overanalyze the fear, and then it would come up with a list of excuses on why I should not confront the fear, and then I end up doing nothing again. As you can see, the solution was pretty obvious. All I would have to do is take my mind and my big mouth out of the equation. In other words, the more I thought about my fears, the more I talked about my fears, the more fearful I became. I had to train myself, just like Pavlov's dog. As soon as my cues to fear would trigger me, a loud bell would go off in my head. Ding, ding! I would then recite my mantra, and then I would move myself into the fear. And in order for this whole process to work, there had to be an automatic response. There had to be no hesitation at all. Also, I didn't cherry pick my fears. What I mean for that is that I didn't attack just my easy fears and put my big fears aside. No, I didn't do that. I treated all my fears equally the same. As soon as my cues would trigger me, I would dive headfirst into the fear, regardless if it was a tiny fear or a fear so strong it would make my knees buckle. The science of habit suggests it takes approximately 66 days for somebody to break a bad habit. And I would probably agree. That's about how long it took me to rid myself of my cowardly ways. But I want to stop here and emphasize the whole experience, the whole 66 days was not simple. It was not easy at all. In fact, it was the opposite. It sucked. It sucked big time. It was awful. It was terrible because I had to confront my worst fears. Those fears that kept me up at night. Like maybe drinking 2 bottles of wine wasn't normal. And that other time, or actually many times, when I got those letters from the IRS that says, open this letter now or we will drag your butt to jail. Maybe I shouldn't have thrown away those letters. Duh, right? But I didn't do any of this stuff because my fears destroyed my common sense. There's many times where I was confronting my fears, I almost fell apart. But what held me together was because of the third part to every habit, the reward. By confronting my fears, I started to feel so good to the fact that I could stand up to them. This time around, I didn't hide from my fears. This time around, I went after them. This time around, I stared down my fears. I did so by being as aggressive as possible with much determination as I hunted down with my fears with vengeance in mind. And by doing so, I was able to discover what was been missing my whole life that I've been searching for. I've been looking for hope. Hope that someday I would find a cure for this disease that made me into a coward that has plagued me my whole life. And I found that antidote. The antidote was courage. Was courage on my side finally. I was able to see all the positive benefits of doing things that scare the living hell out of me. I realized that most of my fears, they weren't that bad. And the ones that were really bad, once I got through them, it only made me stronger. But the real payoff came is after I defeated a fear, I was able to look in the mirror and tell myself, I'm no longer a coward. I'm now a man full of courage. I became so addicted to the power and strength that courage gave me, I started to repeat this pattern of confronting my fears over again and overcoming them. And by doing so, I created my new habit of being brave. By managing my fears, I started to look forward to doing things that were difficult instead of running away from them in the past like how I used to. How? By changing my meaning of what fear meant to me. I stopped seeing fear as something as bad, as something as undesirable, but I began to see fear as something positive, as a positive signal, as a positive sign that something good was about to happen. I actually started looking forward to feeling fearful because I knew I would get better in life once I overcome the fear. And I did. With courage on my side, every area in my life started to improve. From my work, from my personal dreams of goals, and my romantic adventures. Yes! Let's just say, I've had a lot of Debbie Lees since I've learned to be courageous in life. All this, people, is leading to this one valuable insight that I want to share with you guys all today. And that insight in life is, anything worthwhile begins with fear. Before you have the nerve to talk to somebody that you have a crush on, you will first feel like a chicken. Before you're able to get over your worst obstacles, fear will be your first opponent. To be successful in life, you first must get over the fact that you're going to feel like a potential flop. You must do all these things because anything that you do that's meaningful, anything that you do that you're passionate about, that you give a damn about, it all begins with fear. Thank you, everybody.